Welcome, adventurer, DM, world builder, game designer. I've been making this series of how to world build, like great inspirations of our time in world building. We had Final Fantasy, we had Elden Ring and Dark Souls, we had Persona series. Now, let's do something that's popular but not as unified. Web cultivation novel. Those who do not know it, these are usually Chinese or sometimes Korean novels that deal with ascending of what is called a cultivator. Think of a cultivator like an adventurer. They keep leveling up, getting better and better. But they do so through philosophy of self-improvement more frequently than through a game-like leveling system. And so, cultivator novels are much more than in previous episodes that I described world building of the sources that I mentioned, is much more a means to an end type of thing. Instead of starting from an artistic piece of background and then building up from it, cultivator novel usually has a purpose. Purpose is feeling of improvement and power gain, constant rising up to further and further. The promise to the player is to see where we'll go eventually. What will we learn when we are better ourselves for everything that we can do, even in simplistic matters. Those of you who read a lot of these may wonder, am I sure about this? Usually there's lots of silliness, lots of stupidity early on, but that's just being frequently bluntly realistic about people frequently being stupid and needing to firstly overcome being stupid and being petty. Now this can be overdone frequently, especially with how petty and evil people can be around oneself, but most of us have felt this at one time or another, even in real life, just maybe not as frequently yet as inefficiently as in a cultivation novel, but this is all part of its charm. It sets up a world that is slightly less severe than our own, but not necessarily smarter, which gives us a great simulation of climbing up from the very, very bottom of stupidity sometimes. But that is important for a cultivator. You want to cultivate yourself. You don't want to stay the rank noob fool that everybody else is. That's kind of part of the premise and kind of part of the intro usually. It doesn't have to be, but this is very frequently start. Now we don't have to do this super deliberately, and we can do stuff like main character is glorious and wonderful and all that, and sometimes this is even done well, but more what I want to explain is how to build the actual world of a cultivation series, so that you can run it as a tabletop or make a game out of it. To world build such a world, first you need to take a world that you like and build up a great system of elevation of power and energies and improvement of a person further and further. Essentially, you unlock human potential to self-improve without needing to use much artificial mechanics like, DNA editing and making yourself into a Terminator or something like that, like we'll probably need to do here. In a cultivation world, one simply trains themselves, but not necessarily like just in martial arts. No, you learn how to be better at thinking, at wisdom, at poetry, at art, at consuming things, at food, even at drugs frequently for whatever reason. And then you keep going with this. How refined can a human person get? From, as I said, quite mundane roots, quite low roots, and always in adversity of a common world that tries to drag you back down into the bucket. What can you do? What can you do further? Now there is a subgenre, if you will, very broadly spread subgenre of having overpowered cheat abilities from the get-go. I do not prefer to do that or discuss that. because it kind of encroaches upon this whole concept of cultivation in the first place. Because if you already have cheat abilities, is your journey really valid? Did you actually win? Did you actually find the formula to be better? Or did you just coast on a cheat that is pulling you up? But those can be silly fun as well. And sometimes even a cheat can pose interesting questions. Like, how do you deal with being too involved with the world in overpowered ways that you don't kind of really control? That can also bring its own philosophy into the game and do it seriously, but for the default, we are saying that we are now cultivating ever upwards in how we befriend others, how we interpret art, how we cook, how we breed, how we walk, how we dress, because if you never read one of these, it can be quite interesting to see what makes you more feel like yourself. Is it better to dress in this or that? Is it better to walk in these or those shoes, or barefoot, or carry a bigger sword, a smaller sword, a club, a staff? What makes you feel more alive? What gives you motivation to keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking yourself further? Of course, this kind of is a lot up to the players, so as a dungeon master, what we need to do is make a role that sort of makes all of these approaches possible from the get-go. No matter whether one wants to tame pets, or be master of tea, or be master of acupuncture points, or master of medicine, or just gulp down pills like there's no tomorrow. Everything needs to have its own possibility of refinement and acceleration, opportunities and costs, pitfalls and ascendancies, and so on and so forth. And all of that should have some mystical and philosophical weight. As in, why these things give power. All of the things, every single thing should have its own myth, even if it's simple, even if it's something that you banged out in 5 minutes. Every single thing should have its own mythical relevance of why these things are good. And you should sort of compete them, because our opponent NPC may have something that's good, but you may have something that's better, and you should sort of post-process this by saying after the fact why something was better, therefore seeming like you had it planned all along, but you can just sort of praise the winner every time. If player loses, you can explain why the player lost and what were they stupid about and what was the opponent great about. Rinse and repeat for whichever side is prevailing. And this is how you do it in combat, this is how you do it in events, this is how you do it in love and in hate and in politics and in everything that is happening in the world. And we frequently have, for those that don't know, layers that are higher and higher. At one point, local area is too small, but the big city isn't. At one point, the whole country isn't enough, but the whole continent is. At one point, this world is a lower world. You need to go to the higher world where ancient immortals dwell. But once there, you see that that world is all too similar, almost akin to Greek myths to our previous world, except with improvements, and now we do it again. And even again. And we discover secrets when there are even greater gods and greater immortals, and we do it again. And again. And so we cultivate endlessly. I am really yet to see what this would conclude to, but as long as you can keep going and keep refining, this is going to be so much fun for you and your players that nobody's going to care that it's never going to end, because we will enjoy forever seeking perfection. And as long as we can imagine the next step as humans, we can play it. And as long as we can play it, we can build on it and maybe figure out the next step, and then we can play that one and maybe figure it out. And as long as we can keep going. If not, maybe we can finish the campaign at one point where we feel like we did the most that we can with those players and that DM and those stories and that world. Fair enough. You don't even have to say that that's the peak of cultivation. You can just say that this is what the person potentially achieved in their life, and how high they went, how high they flew, how close to the sun they got, which gods they fought, did they become one themselves, and so on and so forth. What kind of epic loves and treacheries they have lived through and gotten back from. What kind of mental scars and inner demons, as they're frequently called. How did they deal with those? How did they become better and better person and eliminate part by part what makes them not the best person they can be? This can be nearly instructional without needing to laugh at it, because I mean, after all, if you're thinking about it so much, even in a fantastic setting, you'll get some ideas constantly, especially since you need to keep this going so many iterations. You'll get more and more ideas to just enjoy yourself more, better, which is awesome fun, even amid silliness. And it's not all silliness either. Frequently, readers who are not familiar with this sort of thing think it's not that cohesive, but people who have read books about these things historically before cultivation novels were even available in English ever, I'm talking maybe even pre-internet, well, it all just makes sense to us immediately because it's just extrapolation, modern RPG fantasy from those teachings. Why not? I mean, it's fun, why wouldn't you? So, learning, in this case, is good, even if it seems at first that you don't know where to start or what's it all for. Because learning is fun. Learning is fun, and when you're learning something fun, learning keeps being fun. It doesn't stop then. So this is kind of how you build a cultivation web novel or game or tabletop, which I want to see more of. That's why I'm doing this. So please, DM, designer, whoever you are, do some. And if you thought this was useful or unique, maybe you can spare me a click, because you could see something new like this from me almost anyway. I make these things just for you. I'm M, and welcome to dMTable. See you next time. Bye.